Hello and welcome to a very special Avasant Digital Forum, Business Process Transformation, Next Gen Sourcing, and Digital Business Models. My name is Andriana Albert and I will be your MC today. Today we're going to do things a little different. The event is going to feature live audience Q&A. Throughout the session, our audience members will have the opportunity to ask their questions live on camera. If you would like to ask a question, please utilize the chat feature on your dashboard. Let us know if you would like to ask a question live, and we will enable your camera and microphone when it's your turn. As always, after the event, a replay of Avasant's digital forum and today's slides will be emailed to attendees. So let's get started. It is now my pleasure to introduce you to Anupam Govil, who will be providing today's opening remarks. Anupam is a partner and BFSI vertical lead at Avasant. Anupam, welcome and thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Andriana, and welcome everyone. So today I'm just going to provide some opening context on the topic, which is how is digital impacting business process transformation industry. As we are seeing, digital economy forces are shaping a new reality for every business. We have on one side digital demand being created by consumers, by companies that are going digital, by governments that are operating in the digital sphere, as well as through the transformation that's happening around us as all the cities and workspaces get connected. On the other hand, the industry is being driven by the digital supply, powered by technology, huge amount of computing power, AI, automation, analytics, access to ubiquitous connectivity, and also the availability of borderless digital talent. And what that's bringing about is a significant shift in the way businesses operate. They're becoming more customer-centric, and they're bringing out new products, services, they're reshaping their business processes and reimagining their business models to align with this demand of this new digital consumer and to become more intimate with their customers, with their partners, with their vendors. Next slide, please. So across the four pillars of every organization, business, people, IT, and process, digital is becoming an amplifier of business transformation and a key enabler. When you look at business, digital is reshaping business strategy for most organizations, enabling new business models, agility, and scale. When you look at people, digital is unleashing new skills and new digital talent. It's enabling the portability of skills. It's driving an innovation culture, and it's shaping a digital workforce. If you look at IT, digital is allowing IT to finally become the power that drives business agility and allows companies to hyperscale using cloud, IT automation, AI, IoT, and a whole host of other technologies. And finally, when it comes to business processes, digital is again changing the way companies operate by bringing in platform-based business services and hyper-automation. Next slide. Now into this reality enters this black swan event, COVID, which ironically has spurred the whole process of digitalization. And we're seeing now rapid adoption of digital models across almost every industry, which is making this change happen much faster. Next slide. Avasant did a study recently to assess the impact of COVID on the investments being made by companies in the areas of digital transformation. And if you look from the beginning in March, when COVID had its impact globally and social distancing and lockdowns came into effect, till the point where we are today and out into the future, you will see that it is reshaping how companies invest in technology and in sourcing. In pre-COVID times, based on our study, 57% of the organizations were increasing spending on digital transformation, which includes cloud and automation and AI enablement and IoT and 5G and all that. We saw that when COVID hit, organizations went into a hunker down mode and had to start moving their workers to work from home, had to look at business continuity and risk mitigation. And in many cases, they were cutting their IT operating budgets and reducing their outsourcing spend. However, starting from June, if you can click again, Jessica. Starting from June, as lockdown started easing up, we saw that the actual investments in digital started accelerating. Most companies came to the realization that we're going to be living with COVID for a while and we're going to be operating in a new normal. So they had to realign and recalibrate their business to operate in this new normal, to engage with customers digitally, to provide them their products and services through frictionless, touchless methods. And this has actually created a slingshot effect, wherein the digital transformation investments are now rising at a faster pace. And through our study, we are seeing now that almost 80% of the organizations are increasing their digital transformation budgets. Next slide. So what does this portend for the business process transformation industry? And that's what we're going to talk about today, and our experts are going to share their experiences. So first of all, thriving in this post-COVID new normal requires a resilient and agile business. That is the new reality. And if you look at the different trends that have been on the way in this industry, they are being accelerated due to COVID. And now we're operating in these digital workplaces where workers have to be managed remotely. The aspects around security, around digital data privacy have to be handled in a remote and a distributed work environment. So many of these trends that you see on these slides, such as BPM, the importance of data and analytics, how automation, machine learning, and OCR technologies have been driving more efficiencies, the rise of the digital workforce, platformization of business processes, and the shift towards innovative sourcing models, hybrid captive models. These are all seeing a significant shift. And it's changing the way enterprises select their sourcing partners. And it's also shifting the way these sourcing vendors deliver their services. So with that, I'm going to hand it back to Andriana, and she's going to go through a set of questions and also invite the audience to participate, and our experts will share their insights. Thank you.
Thank you, Anupam, for your thought leadership and insights. I'd now like to introduce you to our esteemed panel of experts, Robert Jocelyn, Srini Krishna, and Janet Goshi. I'd like to invite each of you to provide a short introduction. Robert, let's start with you.
Okay, thanks, Andriana. Once again, Robert Jocelyn, I'm a partner with Avasant. I head up our energy and resources practice, but at Avasant, we basically do a lot of cross-vertical, so I work with Anupam a lot and support a lot of our BFSI clients as well. I'm one of our primary delivery partners. My background is starting out with IT technology way back from the early 80s, systems programmer, mainframe environment, all the way forward through multiple outsourcing suppliers, and been in the consulting industry for, well, over 20 years, more years I like to think about it sometimes. And as Anupam mentioned, I've seen a lot of the trends and the changes that have occurred, all the way from mainframe environment to decentralization to centralization, and all the different shifts that have occurred. And we're seeing it across all of our client bases too as well. So by helping clients, I help with everything from digital transformation, business process and business process reengineering, because the line between the BP side of the house from a business process and the technology side of the house is continuing to get blurred as they're becoming more tightly integrated and ceasing to become two separate entities and becoming a single entity where the business is needing end-to-end solutions and end-to-end results. And that's what we're doing across multiple clients right now, even as we speak. Adriana, kept it short for me. Back to you.
Thank you. Robert, it's interesting to hear how you've done so many things at the young, ripe age of 30.
Yeah, I've hit the 30 threshold a couple of times now.
Srini, you're up next.
Thank you very much, Adriana. Srini Krishna. I am, as Robert said, I too wear a few hats. The first hat that I wear is I'm responsible for Avasant's UK and EMEA practice. Then I also oversee delivery in this region. And then look at support the transformation and strategic governance practice. I started with this business process area, even before it was called business process management. A few of you might remember, two gentlemen, Michael Hammer and James Champy, came up with business process reengineering. I still have that book. I'll tell you and give you an idea of my age. So that's where I started. Did a lot of reengineering engagements, then moved into helping clients set up captive centers. When in the late 90s, mid to late 90s, many of them started setting this up in India. Then from there, moved to outsourcing. And primarily I've been working in I worked in the F&A, HR, and procurement areas. And then I decided to switch sites and become a client, which is always a nice one, because then you can beat others up rather than being beaten up. But I joined Microsoft, where I spent a decade working in managing transformation and operations and commercials for Microsoft's global finance and operations. Then led an internal team to help our HR, treasury, sales operations, outsource there, and now switch slides again, and from client back to consulting. So that's what I've done. I guess it's sort of literally charted the entire business process transformation, outsourcing, and the captive shared services industry. So thank you,
Great.
Adriana.
Thank you,
Over to you.
Srini. Sounds like you've only done a few things. Janet,
Yes,
welcome.
I still have many more years to go. So thank you.
That's good to hear.
Hello, everyone. I'm Janet Goshi. I'm an Avasant Fellow. Previously, I led Avasant Strategic Governance Global Practice, and I've also led a cybersecurity company and was a senior executive in Accenture's outsourcing business. I work with executives and organizations going through big, complicated changes and help them operationalize their business strategies. Together, we focus on 4 things: aligning business strategies and transformation plans, helping people to understand their critical role in the transformation and their accountabilities. Very importantly, implementing governance mechanisms, both internal and external, and overall creating excitement about the future ahead. Typically, my clients struggle with 3 things. 1, gaining alignment; 2, being able to effectively communicate; and 3, creating sustainable processes in order to make changes stick. So, here we are, all experiencing our own October 2020. And I'm very excited to hear your questions and hopefully add some perspective on how we help organizations with their business process transformation today.
Thank you, Janet, and thank you to everyone. We're very excited to hear your answers to those questions. So I'd like to kick things off with an opening thought. At the beginning of 2020, for many organizations, transformation was already underway. So now in the face of COVID, we've seen a dramatic acceleration in transformation programs across industries. So my question to pose to all of you is, what's changed? What are the key changes you've seen pre-COVID up to today? Robert, let's start with you.
Yeah, I think where things were going, and Anupam was spot on with what he was talking about on transformation. Digital transformation has been around for a while. It took a bit to get hold because in 2006, 2007, when it first started becoming whispers in the trees, organizations weren't really sure exactly what it meant. They'd heard about cloud, they weren't sure what it was in a lot of cases. But over time, it started to really get developed and start becoming a key part of organizations' solutions and delivery models, and starting to work its way into the business. When COVID hit and pre-COVID hit, a lot of things started shifting, and a lot of those shifts that really started occurring were basically, what do we do now? How do we start looking at security? How do we start looking at transforming? How do we look at addressing the interim normal and the new normal? And it's become more, the line's been getting blurred. Organizations are looking at end-to-end solutions. Organizations are looking at how can I basically sustain my business model, and how can I sustain my business model with all the transformations that are occurring and my new needs, my new requirements, and how are my business requirements changing. The world, as has been written about for quite a few years, the world is getting flatter, the world's getting more narrow as well, but the challenges continue to exist on global delivery models, global solutioning models, and how that ties across an organization's requirements. You drop in some of the other things that have occurred on top of this, GDPR, various other additional security requirements, the new cybersecurity risks that all organizations are facing. All of those are coming together kind of simultaneously, and then COVID hits, and we've got basically almost a perfect storm where people are having to address which one first and how to look at the different solutions that they're looking at. So it's changed a lot. It's continued to change. I think people are stepping back and trying to look at things more holistic. You're no longer looking at just IT, just at digital transformation. You're having to stand back and look at it from a end-to-end, from an enterprise aspect.
Great, thank you. Janet?
Sure. Just to build on what Robert is saying there, if you think back to the beginning, if we can, right? Think back to January, the beginning of the year. And maybe in your own organization, there were digital transformations that were planned, some had begun, and then March hit. And the business strategies changed, some programs were accelerated, some needed to change direction, and some needed to slow down, stop. And this had a huge impact on your people, right? And so there was something that was critically important that they were working on January, February, the beginning of March. And all of a sudden that changed, and they needed to start doing something different in the light of all the other distractions that they were having personally. One of my clients that I think was just, a very interesting story to me, who had the most dramatic change is in the financial services industry. Typically, the fourth quarter of the year is their busiest time for customer service and actually getting all the transactions done that they need to do. The beginning of the year is when they have improvement projects that go on. So, they switched gears and they were working on these, kind of internal transformations. And all of a sudden, March hit, and again, their volumes started going up. And so instead of working on, they had to switch gears and start working on actually client service and figuring out how to handle all the volumes that were coming in. At the same time, all of a sudden toward the end of March, they had to start working from home. On March 1st, there was virtually no ability to work virtually. Everybody came into the office. By the end of March, everybody had to work remotely. And so there was a lot of change that happened for them, especially during this time in April, they hit their highest volumes in history. So at the same time, trying to handle their customer service volumes. So, how did they do that? Initially I would call it maybe duct tape and staples, right? They figured things out to be able to securely work remotely and put some things in place fairly quickly. But 6 months later, they have done a total transformation where anybody can work anywhere at any time. And this took, they took 4 things really, and it was a disciplined process from a people perspective, right? Alignment, communications, governance, and excitement. And they put them on steroids. They were very disciplined about the way they handled the people aspect of their transformation. Pre-COVID, I would say, imagine everybody in your organization with a sign above their head saying, I want to be really awesome at my job, right? Help me be awesome at my job. And that's as part of the transformations too. Tell me what I need to do to help this transformation be successful. But today the sign reads, it might read, I'm distracted. I'm having a really tough time today. My kids are being homeschooled. But more than ever, I need to still be really awesome at my job. I need that for myself. And I want to be successful. So my client did what we might call recognizing today's brutal reality, and then did those 4 things well: aligned their teams, communicated, set up the governance mechanisms, and painted a future of a very exciting future ahead.
Thank you, Janet. Exciting indeed. Srini?
Yeah, I think the COVID-19 has done to business in terms of what probably the last time one could think of something was the Second World War, when essentially all the fundamental elements of what we know as business over all and organizations over several years, several even centuries, have been put to test. So as Robert said, organizations were transforming processes or technology or whatever else, and there's always been this focus on trying to become more agile. Whether it happened or not is a different issue. What COVID has done is it's first of all, it's put to test the concept of agility and resilience. But what it has also done is, because it's put the existence of business as a viable entity at risk. There are enough and more businesses today across the globe who may not even exist a year from now because this is shut down of business. So the way I think about it, and one other thing, we still don't know when we will come out of it and in what shape we will come out. So what we are calling new normal, is that the new normal that we will be talking in this time next year? We have no idea. Nobody knows it. So the essential point here is that whilst transformation, some of the large transformation programs may have been either paused or put on hold, but it's actually not a pause or a hold, but actually what's happened is that they have been, the priorities have changed. So now transformation, whether it's digital or automation, whatever else, the focus is, how do I keep the lights switched on for the next whatever time, 12 months, 18 months, 24 months, to run the business as well as can be in the constrained operating circumstances. That's the focus, right? Second is really about bringing down costs. Revenues have fallen. How do I, you can't lay off everyone. How do I bring down costs? So there is the transformation in some ways has shifted focus to meeting what most businesses, and just about everybody believes this is still this is a transient setback to business as we've known it. So that's really where the focus, in my view, has been, trying to switch to whether working from home is a classic example of how you adapt to the constrained environment. And then you have the focus on a reduction of costs.
Thank you, Srini. Okay, so now comes the fun part. I'd like to open it up to questions from the audience. How this will work is once you have a question, we will call on you, we will turn on your camera and audio, and you will be able to ask your question live. So I see we already have a few. I'd like to first introduce Chandrika. If you'd like to ask your question, we'll go ahead and turn on your camera and audio. Jess, if you could do that. One second. There we go. Chandrika, you're on mute. Jess, I think there we go. Hi.
Hi everyone. So my question to the panel is that, so at present we understand that enterprises are undergoing a lot of business restructuring. They are redesigning processes because of automation. And above all, there is a whole new mindset which is required that factors in requirements of a post-COVID-19 landscape. And large enterprises have definitely shown some resilience, but are SMBs really ready to take on this challenge? And if yes, can you cite some industry examples?
Andrea, you're on mute.
Srini, do you want to take that one first?
Yeah, certainly. I think the essential point is not about whether your organization have an option. So it has now reached a stage when it is not about can I do it, should I do it, but it's a question of when you can do it. So survival of organizations is going to be dependent on the extent to which they can transform their businesses, their business processes. And one of our clients it's very interesting. We've been working with them for a long time and doing a lot of work, but the whole notion of it's a family-run business, but the idea that automation would lead to job losses has been something that's impacted them and actually constrained the extent to which they were going to look at transformation. What the last 7 months has done is at least brought to the front the conversation that given the way things are, at least for the next 24 months, from a perspective of survival, they have to start to do some things around that don't necessarily require people to be physically present in a location or other. So automation, it's not just a question of sitting at home and working through Zoom or Teams or whatever, but some processes that have to be automated and viewed differently, and to reduce the reliance on physical presence of individuals is something that they have now brought that to the table and are actively pursuing. So I do tend to agree that there is, if organizations look at this almost for the next 24 months as a survival issue, a lot of it will start to come in place, because it is really about that. If you can survive this, then you have a future ahead in terms of how you can grow your business. To me, that's really the key driver.
Great, thank you, Srini. Okay, we have another question. We have a question from Adrian. Let me go ahead and make you able to use your camera. Should pop up in 1 second. Okay, while we're waiting, we do have a question that someone has typed in, so I can go ahead and read that one. And this is for anyone. With the changing business processes and technology advancements, companies will find it difficult to keep up with all of the opportunities to take advantage of. Is the sourcing strategy an imperative for organizations who do not like or know how to do outsourcing and changing from CapEx to OpEx models? It sounds like a question for Robert.
Thanks, Andriana. I think it is. I agree it's going to be difficult for them to kind of keep up with all the opportunities to take advantage of, but a lot of these skill sets are at least ways on the beginning, and building our initial skill sets an organization may not have. And so they will need to get help. Now, the sourcing strategy, and when you source, you can actually source, you can outsource, or you can source an implementation, source through an SI partner to do that. And it could be, in a lot of cases, the technology that you need to get could be installing bots, for example. One of my large clients is very labor intensive. They've been weathering the storm that we have right now. They do a lot of paper processing, paper handling, and the impact they had when they lost access to people, which is something that does not always happen a lot. Normally, we've worried about technology from a disaster recovery aspect, and the technology, it was more important to recover the technology, but we'd moved away from people-intensive IT typically, but paper handling, whether it's claims processing, claims clearing, invoice handling, scanning, can be a very people-intensive labor and situation. So the capital investment that an organization may need to do that sometimes is a very large spike of capital up front that they may not have now, because to Srini's point earlier, they've been draining cash reserves as they've been weathering this COVID storm. So we're either at the peak, or hopefully we're close to the downslope on the impact of COVID. But as organizations are looking at moving to their new normal, is their new normal going to be technology intensive? Is it going to be people intensive? And can they do that one-time hit on technology for either capital investment, or use a sourcing partner and move more to an OpEx model to alleviate that hit and minimize that hit to offset some of those challenges? So that's where a lot of organizations are looking at, because now they need to not only look at how they can handle it, but if we do have another situation occur, how can they handle that new situation? Can they quickly, if it is labor intensive, if they've moved in enough automation, they can quickly fail from one facility to another facility without having to have a full, a full duplicate set of labor between the two as they move between that. It is a cultural decision within a lot of organizations, but I think the new norm is going to be more toward automation, less toward, people and labor intensive environments. We've been moving down that path anyway. I think this is going to hyper accelerate it. But moving from CapEx to OpEx models is easier in some industries. The utility industry is very, very CapEx centric. They try to avoid OpEx. Other industries try to move that direction. But that capital outlay up front is going to be difficult for a lot of organizations, having just weathered this storm and depleted a lot of their capital, a lot of their cash reserves, and that investment may be challenging. So I think they need to look at that sourcing option. They need to investigate it very heavily. We're helping multiple clients with that now to make a decision which model is the best model for them in the future.
Hey, thank you, Robert.
I'd just like to add one point too. And this is not a COVID, it's just a COVID-driven issue. For a while, and when we speak to our clients, we always talk about organizations needing to take a capability view of themselves. So it's about, as you look at transformation, the question that you've got to ask yourself as an organization is, what are the capabilities I need going forward in an environment, in a market where customers are operating and behaving differently? They're, millennials, how do you handle them? And where there's a ubiquity of digital technology, what are those capabilities that are required? Now, you can't get all of them. Now, so then the question is, do you build them yourself? You may not have it. Do you build them yourself, or do you or do you go and obtain it from another partner? And that's really what, so the way the digital environment is changing is organizations have to view themselves as an ecosystem of capabilities. So if you just take that, and that ecosystem has come out in the front in the last 6 months. Organizations that have had a very good ecosystem have done much better than those that have not. So my answer here is not just, it is, yes, obviously there's a capex to opex and economics issue, but there's also a fundamental premise of the organization in terms of how you want to transform yourself and build those enhanced capabilities to work in a digital environment.
Thank you, Srini. So I see a lot of friends, partners, even clients in the audience. So if anyone would like to ask a question, please let me know. Feel free to send me a chat or to ask in the Q&A.
Adriana,
okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes. Hi, Adrian. Thank you. It looks like we have another question.
Before. One of these sort of glitches where I started to open up my camera and things, and Zoom went into a loop.
No problem.
Rejoining. So I was sort of conscious that you'd ask me a question. I was trying to sort of chip in, and it wasn't working. One of these classic working from home challenges that I think we face on.
The floor is yours.
I obviously missed the question that was asked because I was offline. But the thing that I was really wondering about in all this, and Srini had made some comment about it before, but really around sort of pricing models and service levels, in this new situation that we're looking at now, where obviously revenue is reducing, clearly costs have to reduce as well. So do we have any feel for, what's actually happening in the sort of pricing and service level area? I don't know who wants to answer.
Yeah. I'm happy to take that. The thing about pricing models and SLAs it's a conversation that's been evolving over many years, and it's nothing. It's not something that's changed. At the end of the day, and you got SLAs, output SLAs, outcome-based SLAs, transactional SLA, all kinds of stuff. And same thing in pricing. Long ago, we started with FTE based, transaction based, and you name it and you have it there. The point is, the choice of a pricing model and the kinds of SLAs, service levels that you choose, are really a function of the maturity and the readiness of the buyer organization. It has nothing to do with what the operating environment is. If the client or the buyer, it does not have a history of driving or even measuring metrics, or does not have end-to-end processes, trying to force fit something just because it's the latest toy is actually wrong. Now, so that's the first part to this. The second part is that I think where we're probably moving towards, and especially when we're talking to second and third generation outsourcers, but organizations who've done that before and have developed some level of maturity. What you are looking at, and this is going to be a difficult one for a lot of lawyers and procurement and on both sides to accept, that a contract can have multiple pricing models and multiple types of service performance metrics. This is really a reflection of the different types of services, especially outsourcing contracts that are more multi-services, and where from an organizational perspective, they can have different levels of complexity. You will start to look at different models. We've historically, when you look at a business process outsourcing, there tend to be one pricing model that sort of applies to everything. I think that's something that will start to change. But the one point that I do want to reemphasize, and it's been part of my consulting career, don't go for pricing models or service metrics that you cannot manage, that you are not ready for. Let it evolve over the term of the contract. And this is where the governance that Janet spoke about becomes extremely important. Governance is not just about having steering committees and quarterly committees and so on. It's about the conversation, the effectiveness of conversation between the buyer and the provider.
Great, thank you, Srini. So I have a question. Oh, sorry, go ahead, Janet.
I wanted to build on something that Srini said there, and right at the end. Having a disciplined governance mechanism in place that allows you flexibility to work with your partners, right? So if you have that when everything is going well, and you have a cadence of meetings and reporting, and you have good communication throughout both organizations, when there's a glitch, right? When there's a black swan event, now you have those mechanisms in place that you can jump in and figure out together what needs to change. Does the pricing need to change? Do the SLAs need to change? And I think we saw a great deal of that over the past several months, where either temporary or a little bit longer term changes need to happen. And it's much easier to address those changes quickly when you have these mechanisms in place that are working effectively to begin with.
Awesome, thank you, Janet. So I have a kind of big picture question for everyone. You know, we're talking about, transformation, and we're talking about how it's impacting organizations. So it'd be great to hear kind of the business outcome side of things. You know, a lot of times there's failure rates with enterprise digital transformation. So what are, I guess, some of the best practices that you've experienced working with clients, some of the outcomes you've seen as far as ensuring tangible value for digital transformation initiatives? And this is for everyone. Robert?
Yep, sorry, I was trying to find it, I was on mute. I think it's changing. I mean, and it's still evolving to a certain extent from a digital transformation aspect. Organizations are still getting their arms around the outcomes now that we're looking at and we're helping clients with versus the outcomes from 24 months ago, 14 months ago have changed. The clients now are looking at a whole different set of challenges. And so digital transformation now versus 12 to 18 months ago is radically different. They're still looking at it, they still need to do it, but they're introducing it for different reasons. A lot of cases it's cost cutting, to Srini's point earlier and what we talked about. But in other cases, it's alternatives on how to survive. It's alternatives to what's going to happen when the next business event occurs, whether it's an acquisition, whether it's combining organizations, whether it's phase 2 of another another pandemic situation. A lot of the models and a lot of the existing models within organizations, some of the weaknesses have been exposed that previous may have been talked about, but they really hadn't come to the surface. And digital transformation's a lot more than just the technology. It's the integration of the technology with the businesses and the business processes. So the conversations that are happening now that need to happen. And so rather than looking in the rearview mirror about what success is 12 months ago, which I think to a certain extent are less they're important, but they're lessons that can be learned, but they're less critical than what you're looking at now. Those, what's more important is to look at where I'm at now, talking to the business leader, a combination of the business leader, a combination of what that business's external customers really need, and a combination of what technology can do, what's available within that IT organization to bring together. So how you address those challenges. If it's claims processing, how you cut 2 days off of that, how you eliminate the risk of a labor issue, whether it's an issue with a collective labor agreement, whether it's an issue with you no longer have access to your facility because of a pandemic situation, having those conversations and addressing those. So what we're seeing is with the introduction of bots, introduction of AI, introduction of machine learning, we're able to cut those processing times and those cycle times down significantly, 20, 30, 40%. In a lot of cases, even more in others, depending upon the situation, increasing the efficiency and optimization of, OCR, for example, within one of my clients, automatic form completion, and mitigating the risk that they have if something like this occurs. So, the digital transformation, giving the flexibility to move between sites, between geographies, turn up a new site very quickly with minimal dependency on physical labor, addressing businesses' direct needs to make their new digital customers happier, more mobile capabilities, mobile app capabilities. That whole expectation within the user base has changed. Every month, every year, people are wanting more and more automation. As people are working from home, they need more tools, more processes to actually be able to do their job from home and do it on a consistent basis. The collaborative nature that they need. Now, people at home now, they're not working at home just on their own video conferences. They got 2 to 3 children on video conferences doing distance learning in a lot of cases. Their spouse is there too as well, right? So you've got multiple people. So the on-home network demand, tool set demand that everybody has is increasing too as well. So the software and the hardware and the technology service providers are having to bring that to the table. The clients having to figure out how to integrate all of that into their overall models to maintain that level. So yes, to a certain extent, it's about what's been successful in the past, but I think more so it's what are the capabilities now, what are the future capabilities, and what does that organization think they need to do to be prepared for whatever happens next, but maintain that level of flexibility to be able to pivot. Adriana, I warned you earlier that I have to go on topic a little bit.
No, this is a good one. Thank you.
That's kind of, that's what we're seeing. That's what I'm seeing within multiple customers right now. It's less about 12 months ago. It's more about how do I recover from the last 6 months and how do I protect the next 36 months?
Thank you. So we've got time for about 2 more questions. We're going to have each speaker maybe keep it short to about, 1 to 2 minute answers. So this will be the lightning round. It looks like we have a question from Naresh. Hi there.
Good. Hi there. How are you? So I want to pick on what Robert just brought up, outcomes. And this is more for Srini or Janet. As companies go through this transition, it's change management. How do we help, we're doing process change, we're streamlining operations. How do we help them go through and manage the change? Because that's always a significant problem for any organization. Love to hear their insights.
Janet, you want to start off? You're on mute.
Janet, you're on mute.
There we go.
There we go.
Okay, that's better. Thanks, Naresh. Well, as Naresh and as my colleagues know, I say it's all about the people. It's all about the organizational change management. And so often companies, executives, right, they have transformation programs in place, but kind of sometimes as an afterthought. They realize that now people have to work differently than they have in the past, right? And especially now, it's really hard to do, right? Robert mentioned it, right? There's kids running around behind you, you're working from home, you have new tools that you need to use. And now with all these distractions, how do you focus on doing something differently than you did in the past? And what I find at my clients is, as you might expect, and you've probably seen also, you all have seen, is that when there's a change like this, some people will really love it. They'll love the transformation and embrace it and be excited about it. And there's some people who really like the old way of doing things. Some are just, they want to do it the right way, but there's habits in the old way. And then there are even sometimes those who covertly or even openly try to undermine the change, the transformation that's going on. And so, how do we get people excited to do things differently and to really understand and take up and to understand the new way of working? Sometimes I like to call the transformation sponsor, the transformation leadership, the chief repeating officers, right? That they really need to be out there and clearly articulate the benefits, why we're making this change, because it's not right. It's not all about the technology, but to help people understand why this is critical to the business being successful. Why are we doing this? And I think so often, having a technology background myself, right, I get caught up in the technology and how cool the technology is, but really to focus on why are we doing this? Why is it critical? What's it going to give us as a business? Number one. And then to clearly articulate everybody's role, why everybody is critically important. And if their piece isn't done, if they're not following through on what the expectation and their accountability is, that this won't be successful. And so to make sure they understand their role in it. And again, especially today with all this going on, to really be able as a leader to be able to paint that vision of the future and excitement around what this is going to bring us in the future is really critical.
Thank you, Janet.
Yeah, a quick 10-second add-on to what Janet said. So I think it's important. And the one thing that I think organizations are learning they have to be careful on is basically burnout, because it's real easy for people working from home. Your days get extended. You never seem to get unplugged. And their total personal working model has shifted. So organizations need to, as while people are adjusting, learn how to get help their teams and their staff learning how to work in this new model without basically getting burnout, cabin fever, whatever terminology you want to use, because it is something that a lot of individuals just, throughout their career have not, it's a way of working they've not been used to working.
Thanks, Robert. So it looks like we have time for about one more question. I'd like to invite Shola to ask the final question. I think his video is coming up in a minute. There we go.
Super. Thanks, Andriana.
Of course.
So guys, thank you so much for making the time to do this. I think through the course of the conversation we've been having this afternoon on my end, we've talked about the fact that companies are in different stages of adapting to what we're calling the new normal now. Some companies are actually thriving while some or others are in the in sort of a firefighting / steadying the ship type of phase. My question is kind of focused on companies who fall into the latter category. How do you actually convince companies like that to invest in digital tools and platforms to accompany the business transformation optimization, you could say, activities that they're actually doing right now? What has been the willingness to invest, and what has been the general response from such companies?
Okay, who wants to take that one?
Yeah, so it's an interesting question, because we are in a situation where, as we said, the economics of the business are at stake. So are you going to drive tons of investment money into into programs. And transformation programs have had a problem over 20, 15, 20, 30 years. Transformation programs in many organizations have started off with great promise. My generation would remember ERP implementations of the 90s and the 2000s. And many of them have just a lot of money has disappeared. So there is a level of worry and concern about huge big bang transformation programs. What is happening now is rather than having this humongous program, organizations are looking at smaller bites of the transformation program. So you sort of think about transformation not as a program, a project, but look at it as a journey with different components, and then you start to implement in smaller pieces. Think about them as Lego bricks. So transformation is really a series of Lego bricks that you start to put. One of our clients in the UK, largest client, is essentially done that. They had a transformation program that's been going on, but with COVID, you have to break that down. It's not as though the objectives have changed. The objectives are remain the same. You shouldn't be changing that, because then but in the short run, trying to build resilience, trying to conserve costs, and also to the point that Janet made, how do you give comfort and assurance to your employees that nothing bad happens to them? Balance that, but you create smaller Lego bricks that we're working to implement that. 6 months, 9 months, who knows? But because this is this is one Lego brick in a bigger set, you won't go wrong. So you can sort of morph this into the broader transformation program as the operating environment evolves. So you're not burning cash, but at the same time, you're still on the trajectory.
Yeah, and Srini, with that, I agree completely. I think what's happening is each of your Lego bricks actually can be designed with discrete targeted outcomes. So it's no longer the ERPs that Srini was talking about with SAP implementations and everything in the early 90s. They were a waterfall. You really didn't know the success or not until you got through it. Now you can actually identify it, because digital transformation also, it's not about technology, it's also about adoption. And if you go through the digital transformation and it's not adopted, the investment has less than stellar returns in many cases. So what you have to do is you design it in the Lego bricks with targeted adoption rate, and learn how the organization or the customer base is going to adopt the various implementations too as well. And you can continue to redefine that strategy as you go forward, or choose not to go forward depending upon the situation.
Thanks, Robert. Okay, so we are going to do a double lightning round. Each of you have, you can sum up your takeaway in one sentence. We've got about 2 minutes left, so you have 1 to 2 sentences total to sum up your takeaway for today. Srini, we can start with you.
Thank you. Thanks for putting me on the spot. But to me, business transformation is about a few elements. First is making the organization adaptive to any environment, whether it's COVID or non-COVID. It's how do you make it adaptive to whatever situation comes up. Adaptability comes with learning. How do you make the organization a learning organization? So just like artificial intelligence, the organization learns about what's happening and enhances that adaptability. The third element is sustainability. I just talked about transformation not as a project, which is what we've been associated, but transformation is a journey. Now, what that means is transformation programs have been designed to make it's sustainable. So it's not just about getting some external help, but how do you create that wherewithal in that ecosystem to sustain your transformation trajectory? That for me is transformation.
Thank you. So I think you're going to get the last word, Srini. We are at the top of the hour. Thank you to all of our panelists for joining. This conversation was fantastic. Thank you for all of our attendees. Thank you to all of our questions that we got from the audience. It was great to see everyone on camera. You will be receiving a replay as well as presentation slides via email shortly. If you have a question that was not answered, do not hesitate to email us at events@avasant.com. And be sure to check out more of our upcoming digital forums. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.